The excitement in Tim's voice was palpable as he briefed me on the phone. I found a new lead on that missing couple case, the Davises. There's this old cave up north where a hiker spotted some belongings that might be theirs. I'm heading there first thing tomorrow. Be careful, Tim. That cave. It's got stories, I warned, unease bubbling in my stomach. Stories are just that, stories. I need to find out what happened to them, he replied, his tone dismissing the folklore I knew too well. Dawn was just a silver whisper when I met Tim at the trailhead the next morning, the overcast skies mirroring my apprehension. As we trekked towards the cave, the remnants of fall crunched under our boots, heavy with the smell of damp earth and decay. "We're here," Tim announced, shining his flashlight towards the gaping mouth of the cave as we approached. It yawned wide, the darkness beyond like a solid wall, impenetrable and ominous. We hadn't been inside more than a few minutes when a cold, heavy mist began to roll in, slithering along the ground with a life of its own. My heart hammered in my chest as the air turned bone-chillingly frigid. "Tim, this fog," I started, but he was focused on the ground, picking up a fabric scrap, a piece of a floral dress, perhaps. "This is it. They were here," he said, voice tight with emotion. His flashlight beam danced erratically as he gathered more evidence, a tarnished bracelet, a frayed piece of rope. Each item stoked the fire of his resolve, each step deeper taking us further into the belly of the cave. And then the fog thickened, billowing around us like the breath of the cavern itself. There was a dim light barely visible through the mist, and Tim, driven by a mixture of determination and desperation, chased it. "Come on!" he yelled over his shoulder. I chased after him, my feet heavy, my breath coming in jagged bursts. The closer we got to the light, the colder it became, until each breath felt like inhaling shards of glass. We reached a clearing in the cave, and there it was, the source of the light. Not a lamp or a fire, but a luminescent figure shimmering eerily in the mist. It hovered off the ground, its form vaguely human but shifting, changing as we watched. "The Davises," Tim whispered, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. The figure pulsed brighter for a moment, then shot forward, enveloping him in its glow. I screamed, reaching out to pull him back, but the fog seemed to solidify, gripping me like ice. Tim's screams echoed off the cave walls, mingling with the whispers that seemed to come from the very air itself. I pulled with everything I had, my fingers finally clasping around his arm, yanking him toward me with all the force desperation lends. We tumbled backward onto the cave floor, Tim's face ashen, his eyes wide with fear. "It wants them! It keeps them!" he gasped, trembling violently. Dragging him by the arm, I led us back out of that cursed place, the fog seemingly recoiling as if to let us pass, but not without a parting gift, a lingering, caressing touch that whispered threats and moans. By the time we emerged into the waning light of day, the mist had cleared, and the cave returned to just a dark, hollow space in the mountain. Tim never spoke of what he saw in the fog, but the search for the Davises was called off. They remained lost to whatever dwells within those depths, lurking in the fog. And sometimes, when the mist rolls over the hills near my home, I wonder if it's probing, searching for another soul to claim.
It was supposed to be just another long drive back home along the coastal highway. Jenna and I had done this route 100 times before, but that night, everything felt different. The ocean, usually a calming presence next to the highway, seemed restless, uneasy, as if hiding some deep, dark secret beneath its waves. As we drove, a thick fog began rolling in from the sea, blanketing the road in a dense, eerie mist. It happened so fast. One moment, we were laughing over some silly joke, and the next, I could barely see a couple of meters ahead of the car. I slowed down, the headlights cutting weak paths through the white shroud. "Shit, this is thick," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel a bit tighter. Jenna nodded, her eyes wide as she peered into the impenetrable fog. "Maybe we should pull over and wait it out," she suggested, a hint of worry creeping into her voice. "No way. It's worse on the shoulder. Let's just take it slow, yeah?" As we crept forward, the silence began to weigh down on us. The usual sounds, the distant crashing of the waves, the occasional call of night birds, even the wind, all were muffled by the fog. It was like driving into a void. Suddenly, Jenna screamed, "Stop!" Her hand shot out, pointing frantically ahead. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering in my chest. Through the thick white, I could just make out a figure standing in the middle of the road. Hollow eyes, a gaping mouth, a visage of pure horror seemed to stare right into my soul. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. "Did you see that?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah, I saw it," I whispered back, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a painful moment of silence. Then another shape loomed out of the fog, closer this time. We both recoiled as a face slammed against the windshield. Its features twisted in agony and rage, then disappeared just as swiftly into the swirling mist. "Jesus, what the hell is happening?" Jenna's voice was near hysteria now. I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. I started the car again, foot shaking on the pedal. We needed to get out of there. As we moved, more figures emerged from the fog, surrounding the car, their silent screams and contorted features pressing in from all sides. We couldn't move fast. The visibility was near zero, and the fear of crashing was the only thing that matched our terror of the entities outside. "Screw this!" I finally yelled, swerving the car around in a panic, trying to find a clear path away from the shadows. But every turn was met with more twisted visages, more haunting stares. "Drive. Just drive." Jenna was crying now, her hands covering her face as if to shield herself from the nightmarish vision around us. I pushed the car as fast as I dared through the fog, my heart pounding violently against my ribs, every moment expecting to either crash or be swallowed by the forms in the mist. Finally, just as suddenly as the fog had arrived, it cleared. The road opened up ahead of us, lit by the moon hanging low in the clear sky, the ocean waves gently lapping at the shore, peaceful as if nothing had happened. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, trying to make sense of what we had seen. Was it the fog playing tricks on our minds? Or had we driven through some cursed stretch of road, haunted by souls trapped in eternal torment? We never spoke of it again, but sometimes, when the fog rolls in from the sea, I find myself staring out into it, wondering what lies within, waiting for us, should we ever be foolish enough to drive that coastal highway again at night. I had always found solace at sea, the waves a rhythmic lullaby that soothed my old bones. Moxie, my loyal retriever, was my only companion these days. He was a good dog, attentive and more understanding of my moods than any human ever was. We'd taken to sailing at night, finding peace in the stillness that only the ocean could offer under the cloak of darkness. That night was like any other at the start. I guided the Charlotte, a sturdy sailboat that had seen better days, along the coastal waters. The moon was a thin crescent, barely shedding light over the water's surface, and the stars were veiled behind scattered clouds. It was quiet, just the gentle lapping of water against the hull. As we neared a segment of the coast known for its fluty tales and old fishermen stories, a bank of fog began to roll in from the sea, thick and fast as if it were chasing the boat. Moxie growled low in his throat, his ears perked up and his body tense. "Easy, boy," I whispered, patting his head as I squinted into the white haze. My heart thumped a bit faster, the cold fog bringing a chill that seeped into my jacket and bones. I should have turned back, but the thrill of a little danger was seductive at my age. The fog enveloped us completely, and the world quieted to nothing but the sound of my breath and Moxie's subdued whines. Then, a sound cut through the mist, a soft, dragging shuffle followed by a heavy, wet thud. "Hell's bells," I muttered, peering into the void. "Who's there?" No answer, just the creepy echo of my own voice slipping away into the fog. The atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, and I could swear the fog turned darker, shadows moving within like swirling smoke. Moxie barked fiercely now. His fur bristled. "All right, show yourself," I called out, more to keep my own fear at bay. That's when I saw them. Figures emerging through the fog, dressed in tattered marine garb, faces obscured and bodies limping, dragging themselves toward the Charlotte with ominous intent. Pirates. Dead ones, if my eyes didn't deceive me, cursed to roam the sea. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. A gruff voice split the silence. "Ye trespassed and now ye must pay," it boomed, sounding from everywhere and nowhere. "I'm armed," I lied, trying to sound braver than I felt. Moxie stood by, his growls deep and guttural. The figures halted as if considering my words. Then, with a collective moan, they surged forward. In desperation, I grabbed the flare gun, shot it straight up into the air. The flare soared, a bright red orb against the drab fog, casting eerie shadows. The figures recoiled as if burned, their moans turning into wails of agony. Using their moment of weakness, I steered the Charlotte hard to starboard, sails catching a fortuitous wind that seemed to come out of nowhere. We sailed clear of the fog bank, the sound of the sea returning to normal, the ghostly pirates disappearing into the mist as if they had never been. Moxie settled down, curling up by my feet, his body still tense but slowly relaxing. As we moved away, heart still pounding fiercely, I took a deep breath. "Not tonight, not tonight," I repeated to myself, glancing back at the retreating fog. Moxie whined softly, as if in agreement. Shaken, we continued along the coast, the Charlotte cutting through the water with renewed urgency, eager as her captain to leave the haunted fog behind. I knew one thing for sure. Our night sails would stick to clearer skies from now on, away from the cursed coasts where the dead did not sleep soundly. And as for Moxie and I, we had a new respect for the tales old sailors told by the fire.